So quick rule of thumb is it's typically something that's like less than 100 values. It's not always the case, but it tends to be helpful. Things that change very infrequently but can change, and things that are used in defining attributes of other data objects, meaning that changes to this have big impacts beyond the values themselves. So, for instance, if you have something like an employee status, you have an employee entity, and that employee has a job, and that job has a status, and when that status changes from active to inactive or full-time to part-time or whatever, however you're tracking those employee statuses, that'll have a major impact on that, on that other entity, on that other object. And these are also things that sort of benefit from approval review before the change. So you might have some things that are out there that are referenced that you might think of that qualify as like less than 100 values, and they change infrequently. But like, if they change, it really doesn't. It's not something that causes much impact or causes any problems. So the main things that we're really focusing on, kind of to narrow the mind and prioritizing your effort here, is to say, what's the list of values that are out there right now that are important for us to understand, in order to, do the work that we need on reporting or documenting our data. That we just need to really understand those items and what they mean from lists and code values, or that have critical impact on data quality kind of components, and that when they change, we would need to manage that. So that's your kind of rule here. And from a pragmatic data governance perspective, it's not worth your time to document, manage, reference data values unless you need to understand or plan or monitor or map those items between systems. So some examples, as I mentioned, we work with a lot of higher education institutions, so registration statuses is something. So if I'm registered, you might have a series of statuses for what it means to be registered in a course. So this is a new registration, it's an add, it's a drop, it's a withdraw, and it's a cancel. And those things have very specific meanings, and those occasionally change where you might have, we're adding a new thing where if you if you get automatically withdrawn from a class because you never showed up or something, it's going to get this new status, and that's important. There's this other thing that happens a lot of times with these types of statuses, is that you have this concept of a type, right? So you might have 10 different registration codes, a new registration, and add or a drop or withdraw, and many of those things there is important nuance between them or informational things, but really most of them a handful of them fall into the same roll-up category of being I'm actually registered for this class, and the rest of them fall in the category of I'm not registered for this class. So that's this. So many times when you're talking about these reference data values, you want to understand the specific nuance of each of those values, but then there might be categories of them within that as well. Ethnicity is another one that people are tracking a lot of times, and that changes over time. But you might have different methods depending on what you're where it's being tracked and what you're legally allowed for, or what you can use that information for. Health claims coding, provider type, diagnosis type, treatment service type, those types of things are important to track. This might fall a little bit more into those inventory categories, but those are good examples. So a couple of quick thought-provoking examples here to think a little bit more about. So employment status we talked about. Gender is, these are sort of relatively simple statuses and codes. States and provinces, or zip codes or NAICS codes, those are larger lists of codes that have external standards and might also have roll-ups. So if you're familiar with a NAICS code, that's a procurement code. So hey, if in the United States, if I sell software, it has a particular code, but that might roll up to a general IT code. So that has those roll-up values. And then you might have some reference data values that are kind of an aggregate of those. So I might have a course section, maybe Math 101, 01, Fall 22, that actually has multiple lookup values in it. And we probably wouldn't be tracking the section as a lookup value, but the individual components of those may be valid lookup values. But it depends on how you want to track that. Choices or booleans are probably not ones you want to. So, if I've got true or false, or yes or no, or whatever. Like, you might probably are thinking of those of more of just data type kind of things and not reference data values. But there could be reasons that you want to track those as specific choices, particularly maybe if you map them between systems. So some of those enumerated value lists you might want to think about as not tracking them as reference data lists.